Hello friends, this is Jennifer Terri and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will share the news to you on the latest update or changes on the testing and quarantine rules in the Philippines. So the information that we'll share today is a much more detailed information than our last video. So stay with me. So the Philippine government has revised the testing and quarantine protocols for passengers for Filipinos and foreign nationals arriving in the Philippines from the 35 banned countries. Okay, so these 35 countries, you should all be aware of this. If you are coming from any of these 35 travel restricted countries, there is a new rule for your testing and quarantine. So just to be clear that we're all on the same page, this new quarantine and testing protocols or rules only apply to those passengers coming from the 35 travel restricted countries. So, if you are not coming from any of the 35 countries, or if you are merely transiting to any of these 35 countries, then old rules apply to you, and that is one COVID test upon arrival, and then quarantine for 1 to 2 days in the hotel until your COVID negative result comes out, and then go home if you're not coming from a banned country. Now let's go to the rules or the new quarantine and testing rules for passengers coming from the banned country. First up, when you arrive in the Philippines, you'll undergo a COVID test. That's your first COVID test that is upon arrival at the airport. So for non-OFWs and foreign nationals, you have to pay for this, and this will cost you 4,000 pesos, and the payment can be done on-site or online, and that is through cash or credit card. You can use US dollars or Filipino peso. And there are ATMs at the airport and money exchange booths too. Now for PAL passengers, you'll undergo the PAL's private testing lab, the ToxiCare. Now for non-PAL or non-passengers of Philippine Airlines, you'll have your test with PADLab or with RedCross. That is your choice. And for OFWs, you'll have your COVID test with RedCross free of charge. So after you had your first COVID test, the next step is to quarantine. So for non-OFWs, you will be assigned in a government quarantine facility which is free but subject to availability of accommodation. So in cases where government facilities are at full capacity, or if you do not wish to stay at a government facility, then you must prepare to shoulder your accommodation in one of the stringent quarantine hotels at your own expense, including your transportation from the airport to the hotel and your food. Okay, so I'll just say it again. If the government facility is at full capacity, or if you don't want to go to the government facility, you want to go in a hotel that you chose, then you'll have to pay for it. You have to pay for the stringent hotel. So for the list of the stringent hotels accredited by the government, I'll have the link in the description box. So if you are booking, please make sure that you book in a stringent quarantine hotel, not in the mandatory quarantine hotel. So if you open the site, do a long scroll, and then you will find the stringent quarantine facilities. Now, how many days do you have to pre-book? So the recommendation is that you book for at least 5 days in the stringent hotel. Now, with regards to the quarantine, please note that the Bureau of Quarantine defines day 0 to commence upon arrival at the airport, and day 1 shall begin after 24 hours of arrival to the Philippines. Okay, so your day of arrival will not be counted. Okay, the quarantine day starts the next day after. Now here is the new info this is the new info that gives travelers an option. What is this option? So this option is that if you test negative on the first COVID test, you will receive an email of your results stating that you're negative, and you will receive another email, a second email, asking whether you wish to avail a second COVID test or continue your 14 days quarantine. See? This is an option now. So if you don't want to undergo a second COVID test, then stay at your hotel, finish the 14 days. Now, if you want your quarantine to be shorter, then undergo the second COVID test. If you choose to undergo the second COVID test, for non-OFWs and foreign nationals, the second COVID test will cost you again another 4,000 pesos. And again, this is at your own expense. So for PAL passengers, Philippine Airlines passengers, same with your first COVID test, your second COVID test will be administered by the Philippine Airlines Detoxicare Private Testing Lab. And this can be done in your room, in your quarantine room, or at the prescribed area in your quarantine hotel. So with the test result released within 24 hours. So you can pay at the day of your test in your hotel, or you can also pay online. So the prepayment, if you want to pay in advance online for your second COVID test, you can do this in a prepayment link that is included in the second email that you have received. And please do note as well that they require one lead time between your registration and your second test and the actual day of testing. So make sure to register for the second COVID test straight after you receive your negative result of your first COVID test. Yeah? So be decisive. And for overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, for a second COVID test, you should coordinate with OWA or the relevant governing authorities. Now, if the second COVID test yields a negative result, you can request for a quarantine certificate at the quarantinecertificate.com. Okay, open this site and get your quarantine certificate. That is a proof that you have finished your quarantine and you already have negative COVID results. Now, please present your 2 negative test results and the quarantine certificate for clearance from your hotel. Yeah, don't worry because hotels have printers. Make sure that you print your 2 negative COVID results as well as your quarantine certificate, because you will need that to present to your local government unit when you go home. So, when you have been cleared by your hotel and when you get to your final destination, you are required to finish the 14 days quarantine. So, under the monitoring of your local government unit. Okay, so you already had 5 days quarantine, so it depends whether they want you to do only 10 days. It really depends on the rules of your local government unit. So get in touch with them as soon as you get home. Let your barangay health officials know arrived from overseas and that you have done 2 COVID tests. Let them know, okay? Tell them, coordinate with them. So that is our news or update for the testing and quarantine rules. So for passengers coming from the banned countries, you have now an option to undergo 2 COVID tests or finish 14 days quarantine in the hotel. So that is your choice, whatever you want. But just make sure, again, a reminder that the COVID test will be at your own cost. Whether you do it once or twice, it will be at your own cost. So that is all for this video, friends. If you have any questions, comment down below and I'll try my best to answer your questions. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel and share this news for anyone traveling to the Philippines. I will see you again with another update. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.